This is Ticats Today on the Ticats Audio Network for a Wednesday, August the 18th, 2021. It's your digital host, Louie B. Thanks so much for joining me wherever you get your podcasts. Ticats still on bye week. They didn't cut it short. They're still on bye week, so not much to talk about when it comes to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They're still 0-2. Nothing's really changed. I did notice Dane Evans was out with his wife out on the town in Hamilton. So great to see Dane and Murph, his dog too, and his wife Nikki. But players have been relatively quiet. I thought I'd be able to keep tabs. I thought I'd have like a big, here's what everybody's up to on bye week. But they're doing a good job of shutting down social media and tuning it out, and hopefully, just kind of refocusing, regrouping, and getting ready for their next game against the Montreal Alouettes next Friday. Speaking of the Montreal Alouettes, because there's the Ticats Today bye week edition, we're going to take a look at matchups throughout the week in the CFL, and today we're focused on the Calgary Stampeders hosting the Montreal Alouettes. And very pleased to be joined later on in the show by Danny Austin. He covers the Stampeders for the Calgary Sun and Herald. Lots to get into with Danny because, of course, the big news across the CFL yesterday was that Bo Levi Mitchell had been placed on the 6-game injured list after breaking his leg. So, obviously a huge loss. Bo Levi Mitchell, a surefire Hall of Famer when it comes to the Canadian Football League, Canadian Football Hall of Fame. But next up, Michael O'Connor, a Canadian. Yes, we are going to have 2 Canadians start a game in a season in the CFL. The same season, 25-year-old Michael O'Connor is going to get this start for the Calgary Stampeders. So we'll get to that with Danny in just a few moments. But not a great start for the Stamps. They're 0-2 for the first time since 2009. So obviously, things aren't going right in Calgary. They'll try to straighten the ship when they take on the Montreal Alouettes, as mentioned on Friday. And let's get to this conversation because Danny Austin's here with us now. And Danny, the Stamps are 0-2. Bo Levi Mitchell is on the 6-game injured list. I have to know, did the sun still rise in Calgary
Yeah,
today?
it rose. I would say that literally the smoke has cleared here in Calgary. The forest fire smoke is gone, but it's not a great time to be a Stampeders fan. Let's be honest.
Let's talk about Bo Levi Mitchell. Obviously, the face of the franchise for many years. Broken leg. It's not like he's done, but just how big of a loss is Bo Levi to this team?
It's huge. I think that we saw in 2019 when Bo went down sort of with a shoulder injury, Nick Arbuckle was there and obviously did a good job, was ready to step in. Arbuckle had been the backup for a year, right? He had that experience. He'd been in the system. He knew it, was clearly ready to be, a quarterback in the CFL. I don't know that you can say that about Jake Meyer or Michael O'Connor, who are the 2 guys who showed up at the beginning of camp. I'm not saying they're bad players, not saying they won't be ready, but it's bad. And when you're 0-2 and you're missing your starting quarterback for 6 games in a 14-game season, you start connecting the dots, and it's a pretty horrible situation for the Stampeders.
Obviously, no Ryan Dinwiddie, who was a huge part of Nick Arbuckle's development, and I'm sure Bo Levi's continued success. But there is some consistency on this coaching staff. Pat Delmonico, 8th season. Mark Mueller, 8th season. Dave Dickinson, 13th season. How is that going to help Michael O'Connor and kind of Dave Dickinson kind of all be on the same page here?
Yeah, I think Dave Dickinson, as we all know, he's a former quarterback. He's a quarterback's coach, and I'm not going to in any way. Dinwiddie was a big part of both Bo, but also Arbuckle. So it's a big challenge for Mark Mueller. But I think the Stampeders know their system. That's always been true. It's sort of, they obviously change certain wrinkles, but it's the same thing year after year. So I do think that O'Connor, since he signed, has had the playbook, has been learning it, and I think that you have an experienced, stable coaching staff. And what Dave has said, and I think that this is important, and this is where, having a quarterback's coach mattered, is he says, we're not, whoever's the starter, and there's still some debate, although, I think that's just, there's not that much debate. But if O'Connor goes in there and has a couple bad throws, Dickinson wants him to know that he's not going to pull him, right? He has his trust. He doesn't have to play perfectly. And I think that trust and just sort of knowing your place matters, and I think we'll see a lot of that over the coming weeks. I don't think Michael O'Connor needs to be Bill Levi Mitchell in week 1.
I think anyone in the CFL, if you ask who covers this league, if you say, who's Jake Mayer, I'm not sure if a lot of people would know. You cover the Stamps, so I got to ask you, who's Jake Mayer?
Yeah, I mean, he's an American kid. I know that they're really high on him. He played, I believe, UC Davis down in California. Can absolutely throw the ball. I mean, he is fun to watch. But as we both know, watching the backups in practice, they can make nice throws, but that doesn't mean they're making the right reads and all sorts of things. But the fact is, I mean, he won a job in camp. They like what they see. He's young. I don't know that he's ready to be taking starters reps. He doesn't have much experience in the Canadian game. We didn't even have a preseason game to sort of get him that experience. But whether Jake Meyer's ready now or not doesn't mean he won't be ready. I think there's real potential there, and the Stampeders are really high on him for that.
We're talking to Danny Austin. He covers the Stamps for the Calgary Sun and Herald. Positives to take from the first 2 games? I know here in Hamilton we've kind of been struggling to find some positives, but what about you? What have you seen from Calgary that makes you think, all right, the season's not over?
Those are 2 different questions. Look, I think the run game has been better than it was in 2019. I think Kadeem Carey has done a good job, and the combination of him with Ante Milanovic-Litre, I think if they can really get it going and get the offensive line finding holes, I think that's going to be a real weapon for them. Look, quarterbacks, both McLeod Bethel-Thompson and Mike Riley, put up pretty decent numbers against the Stamps, but I actually think the Stamps defense has been pretty solid at keeping teams out of the end zone. There's sort of been one bad drive a game that I think people are focusing on, but if the defensive line can start putting a little more pressure on opposing quarterbacks and just give the defensive backs a break, I think the defense will be in good shape. So, I think there's going to be a lot of games. If the Stampeders are going to win, they're going to have to win, 2018, 21-17, those types of low-scoring games. And I think the defense is good enough to maybe keep them in it.
And just want to ask about John Hufnagel. Do you think he'll be kind of on the phones this week, or do you think he's going to wait and see what he's got with Michael O'Connor before kind of pulling a trigger on any signings or trades if there are quarterbacks out there?
It's the big question. I mean, I don't think the Stampeders want to be going ahead with just 2 quarterbacks for 6 weeks. The nice thing is, I mean, I shouldn't say nice thing, that's the wrong term, but with a little bit of like a fracture or a break, your recovery time. Like, it's not the same as sort of an ACL or an MCL or soft tissue damage. So I think the Stampeders do know when Bo will be back. And I don't know that you're going to go out and get a veteran who needs to potentially be able to play for the rest of the year in case there are complications. So, yeah, I mean, I think you might look if there's anyone available, try to find sort of a third stringer, just someone who, in case things go really badly, is available. But for now, the reality is I think the Stamps need to roll with these 2 young quarterbacks and hope that they pick the game up fast and that it works out. I don't think you're going to go get someone who's ready to take starter reps off these 2 yet.
Well said. Danny, thanks for doing this. Appreciate catching up.
Man, always my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Danny Austin, he covers the Stamps for the Calgary Sun and Herald, and 0-2 for the Ticats, not a great start. 0-2 for the Stamps, the worst start for that team since 2009. I was about to say like 2012, 2013, but I had to stop myself and say 2009, which doesn't even make sense. 2009. More than a decade since the Stampeders have started 0-2, and another home game, this time against the Montreal Alouettes, and the Alouettes looked good last week. Let's admit it, they look good. The Ticats next opponent next week, so tough matchup for Michael O'Connor and the Calgary Stampeders on Friday night. Speaking of the Calgary Stampeders, and speaking of Ryan Dinwiddie and Nick Arbuckle, 2 men we mentioned in that interview, of course, Ryan Dinwiddie, the head coach of the Toronto Argonauts, he announced today that Nick Arbuckle will be his starting quarterback week 3 against the Bombers. So Nick Arbuckle, who came into the game in Winnipeg in week 2 after McLeod Bethel-Thompson was benched in the third quarter, will get the start for the Toronto Argonauts when they take on the Blue Bombers again. This time in Toronto on Saturday afternoon. And not sure if you're going to make the trip, but I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about it. take the GO train, 4 p.m. kickoff, maybe spend a couple of hours in Toronto to go see the Toronto Argonauts play, because the first CFL game played on Ontario soil since the 2019 East Final. So, wow, that was a long time ago. You have to go back to November of 2019, the last time CFL was played in Ontario. So, big game for both teams. Argos looking to get back on track, and the Blue Bombers looking to go 3-0. And I don't know, could we call it a Zach Collaros revenge game? Obviously, he had his first stint with the Toronto Argonauts back in the day, but was on the Argos roster. Never saw any action before being traded to the Blue Bombers. So we'll have to see how Zach Collaros does against his two-time former team. We'll get more into that game on tomorrow's show. But just one little other tidbit here. Obviously, we all mourn the loss of former Ticats owner and BC Lions owner and an iconic Hamiltonian in David Brayley. Of course, owned the Ticats from the brief stint from the late 80s, early 90s. Was a former chairman of the CFL Board of Governors, and of course, best known for turning around the BC Lions franchise. Well, the BC Lions have a new owner, Amar Doman, which was just announced this afternoon. He's got 25 years of experience in building materials industries, and he's the founder and sole shareholder of the Futura Group. So BC Lions ushering in a new era with the new ownership, and some exciting news for the CFL, because the CFL is better when they have passionate owners who care about the teams, and we're always very fortunate here to have Caretaker. And if you missed our Caretaker update, by the way, go check it out wherever you're checking out this podcast. Had a great chat with Bob Young, owner, caretaker of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and make sure you like and subscribe to all our podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, because we got a great episode of Task and Twos that dropped yesterday. We're going to have a great episode of Ticats this week with RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker dropping tomorrow. And of course, we got Ticats today, even on the bye week. We've got Ticats today, right here on the Ticats Audio Network. As mentioned, on tomorrow's show, we'll be teeing up the Argos and Bombers. Looking forward to a great chat with the CFL on CFL.ca's Matt Cause and TSN 1050 host Matt Cause. So looking forward to chatting with him about the Argos and Bombers. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's show. Really do appreciate it. As mentioned, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. For the Ticats Audio Network, I'm Louie B. Hoping you have a great day.